Yeah, it's really good to have this opportunity to share my Christian faith and a little bit about my life. I think that when you speak to people, I think honesty is by far the best part. And so I would say to anybody that's taken Bible study, especially during this pandemic when we got a lot of time on our hands, we're all probably at some point in time afraid, don't know who to trust or how to trust. But the thing that I look at is ask God to forgive me for my unbelief. But I just want you to know that I'm not the type of person to try to make myself look like that, I don't have any issues and faults. But I thank God for looking beyond my faults and seeing my needs. I remember when I first started taking Bible studies, I'm probably like a lot of you that will see and hear and listen to this video. Is like, well, you know what, I really don't want to do this because but then I'll just go through the motions. And I've been there. I did that. But I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I said, you know what, deep down inside, even though I knew and felt that I was not interested, let me just give God a minute. Because when we stop and think about it, the Lord has brought us from a mighty, mighty long ways. He's brought us through a whole lot, situations, mishaps, close calls, enemies. Oh, I could go on forever. But as I look back over my life before I really started taking Bible studies and got into church, I remember when I was in the military, I was just a youngster. I hadn't even turned 21 years old yet. And that I was in the air and the plane I was on caught a fire. But the first thing that came to my mind while everybody else was yelling and screaming, knowing that we didn't have parachutes on, is I began to pray. And I just said, Lord, I know that I've not been anything close to what you want me to be. I smoke, I drink, but Lord, if you just save me. And a few years later, I remember I started taking Bible studies. When I was taking Bible studies, I started listening to what I was reading. And I said, you know what, I don't want to just read. Let me try something different. I did everything else. Let me try to just take God's word in. Okay, so you say if I just trust him and I'll read and learn about God, it'll change my whole life. Let me be the first to tell you. You heard a lot of other people say that, right? But let me tell you how much he's changed my life. When I went through a heart attack, I prayed. When I went through cancer, I prayed, I cried. See, when I found I had cancer, I was at stage 3, and I knew that my next step was not through life. It would be eyes closed, arms folded. But I said, Lord, I, I just want to be your angel. I want to let people know that when this is over, that you are a healer. And if they just read and trust you, let go and let God. But by studying his word, any problem that you go through from A to Z, you've been there. We're going through this pandemic now. Whoever thought we'd be at this? A pandemic, corona, an invisible enemy. Oh, my Lord. But if you study his word, you know that these things is just coming into reality. We're not living in those times. You hear people talk about last days. I don't worry so much about last days. You know what I worry about and think about all the time? Do I have my life right? Am I doing what God asking me to do? To love my enemies, to pray for people, and to treat people the way that I want to be treated, knowing that it's not about self-gratification. It's about the love that I have for the Lord because of what he's done for me. I remember when I was in a coma. Yes, I was in a coma, dead to the world. See, I didn't know that. But the one thing that I did know is to ask God to spare my life. So as I'm talking to you, I'm only here by God's grace and his mercy. See, when I lay down last night and the death angel came by one more time, mercy said no. And God's grace bestowed me. And I'm sharing with you that all you got to do is just read and heed God's word. What he did for me, he'll do for you. Thanks for listening. Trust God.